Alex, you were not chosen by the Big Show.
I'm sorry, what?
You were not chosen by the Big Show.
Is the Big Show going around choosing people? What's happening?
You didn't see that video yesterday?
Oh, wait. Sorry. You're talking about...
Hold on. This is...
Sorry. I didn't have coffee this morning. I'm not entirely on my game, shall we say. Yes, I did see that. I did see that the Big Show chose Dr. Tracksuit. I also saw the little bit of the video at the end where we find out that Danny O'Dwyer has been feeding his interview subjects answers to questions like who should win the PAX Royal Rumble. And let me tell you right now, that is some bullshit. I did not know that Danny O'Dwyer was in Dr. Tracksuit's pocket, but now I know. And let me tell you, I'm gunning for him. I don't even care if he's in the Royal Rumble. That guy's going through a table by the time PAX Prime is over.
What was the setup? You announced the setup this year.
Yes.
It's a little bit different, right? You're not actually competing in the Royal Rumble, so to speak.
Well, it's not even this year. It's just this PAX, because the other one was earlier this year.
That's right. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. No, the format's not super different. There's still going to be a 30-person over-the-top battle royal featuring many luminaries from the video game industry. But the winner of that battle royal will take me on in a one-on-one match for the championship. I have yet to add any stipulations to that match, but I am told that I have a little wiggle room there, so I am debating what the best kind of match will be. Could be a steel cage match, could be a hardcore match. I don't know. No disqualifications. We'll see. We'll see what comes out. But I'm thinking it over.
Guess you're also limited by what's possible in an N64 cartridge.
I'm pretty sure that game has most of those things, so that will work. But yeah, there are some limitations to work around. It will be fine. I am open to all challengers because I know I can beat just about any of those chumps.
Well, we'll talk more about that, I guess, as we get closer to PAX, which is not that far off.
It's just a couple weeks away now.
Apologies for folks that are watching this live that normally watch it on the site. Chat is on fire, as it sometimes is, and because it's early in the morning, there aren't as many people on the West Coast looking at it. So we've got someone looking into it. If it comes online in the middle of the show, I'll go ahead and turn that on. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do when it comes back with an error that says, go fuck yourself, and I just have to move on with my life.
Yeah, it is what it is. But, we'll assume there are people watching this.
I know there's a viewer count in the corner on my end. I know. There are people watching this.
Okay, well, I don't have that, so I
should have said that just 2 people are watching it. I should have just tried to make you. Would 2 people be better, or would 0 people be better?
0 people would be sadder. I mean, 2 still.
And then 2 people
sad.
Could just be technically us. I wouldn't be able to fully reconcile if that is just Google counting the 2 people hosting the show.
I'll tell you what. Every 3 minutes, just yell out the number of people who are watching the show, so I know how many people are watching the show. That's the only way I'll be satisfied.
That's then I'm never gonna make any noises for the rest of the show.
Oh man, you know this. I can't carry the show by myself. I don't have that ability.
So we have not really played too many video games this week. I played. Well, okay, not true. I played. It ties into Gamescom, which is where a lot of the news has been coming out this week. There's plenty of news to talk about, lots to break down, and lots to react to. But I did play PT.
Yes.
Which stands for Playable Teaser, which also functions as a interactive demo that, when finished, although finishing it is nigh impossible, reveals that Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus? Reedus?
Yeah.
Reedus. The best character on the TV show Walking Dead, and an otherwise horrible TV show.
Didn't have to be that way.
It didn't. Sometimes it's okay. Most of the time it's not. And they're working on a new Silent Hill game called Silent Hills. And so I wrote an article on the site about it because I have my vocally expressed problems with some of Hideo Kojima's recent creative choices, but goddamn, the man is a magician when it comes to unveiling things, and this is really no different. At Sony's Gamescom press conference, they very briefly revealed that there was a new game called PT, and there was a demo you could download on the PlayStation Store. They said it's from a new studio, it's a new game, and that's really all they said about it. And immediately after that, Sony employees on Twitter were like, hey, you guys got to figure out the secret of PT, which sort of implied there was something going on there beyond just some sort of demo released alongside of a new announcement. And as it turns out, that secret was that they're working on a brand new Silent Hill game running on the Fox engine, and I'm getting text messages that I'm going to see if it means the chat is working. Chat's not working.
No.
There was some positivity in a first text message and then some negativity in a second text message. Anyway, so that was announced, and I can get into how I feel about it and when I downloaded it and played it. And there's quick looks and Spook and Scoops on the site. But Alex, do you have any relationship with the Silent Hill series whatsoever?
Not nearly as much of a relationship as my girlfriend has, who has played,
Really?
I think, everything up through 4. And she was really into a lot of the J-horror stuff from that era, and Silent Hill 2 especially, I think, was her favorite. But she was very, very into those games. I've played 2 and 1. I played a little tiny bit of 3 and 4, but not enough to really say that I seriously played those games. I think that of the horror games from that era, they are probably my favorite. My main thing is that I didn't play a whole lot of horror games from that era to completion because I am a gigantic scaredy pants, and they are very fucked up games that even in the doses I did manage to play them in left some lasting scars on my psyche. So that is why I don't have quite as much of a relationship to them, but I do think that the early Silent Hill games are pretty amazing, all things considered.
Yeah, I have heard some folks, as the Silent Hill series has been dissected, but Silent Hill 4, which started out not as a Silent Hill game,
Right.
it was kind of transformed into a Silent Hill game to, well, for money, because a Silent Hill game gets a little more attention than not a Silent Hill game. But people really like that game. I didn't get very far into it. I played a little bit of it in college, and it just kind of fell off, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was because it was a bad game. I just didn't really play much more. But yeah, Silent Hill 1 and 2 are high watermarks for me in terms of both that series and just kind of the genre, more generally speaking. But I didn't play 3 and 4, but I did play everything that came after that.
Oh,
I have played Downpour, I have played Shattered Memories, I have played Homecoming. They're bad games. They're bad. Well, no, okay, let me take that back. Shattered Memories is interesting and tries some cool stuff. The fact that it was made for the Wii, which initially sounded crazy, they actually kind of went for it in a way that was really charming and unique. You were constantly using the Wii remote to actually hold it up as a speaker that they would use to kind of creep you out and also help you solve puzzles. It was genuinely more interesting than, I think it was kind of a remake of Silent Hill 1 or 2. I can't really remember. It was sort of a pseudo remake reinterpretation of one of the original games, and it was better than it had any right to be. But Homecoming, Downpour, those are bad games. People that try to defend them, they're just Silent Hill fans like myself that are trying to reconcile having spent dozens of hours playing games that are not very good.
I did try to play Downpour, and I was bored to tears by it. Just nothing about that game stuck out to me at all. I just remember wandering around it and going, this feels like someone played a Silent Hill game, did not understand anything about why it was actually an effective tool of scares or horror or just disturbing imagery, and just said, I'm going to do my own shitty cover version of what a Silent Hill game is, and the end result was something that I didn't want to play for more than like a couple of hours. I was like, this is just the most tedious bullshit I can imagine, and none of the scary, like, interesting stuff at all.
Yeah. So, getting then to PT, which is not any of those things. PT is utterly terrifying. It's scary as shit. I have not played something that intense probably since Amnesia: The Dark Descent a couple of years ago. So PT starts out in a hallway, and it stays in a hallway. And that's part of its genius. Obviously, the final game will be much more expansive. It'll probably take place in, a town of some sort.
But what if it doesn't?
As
But
the,
if that is the game,
you could have charged for PT, and I would have had zero problem with it.
like if that was like a $5 download, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, it's that well done. That's very specific to me in horror, but maybe some other people. If you'd probably be pissed if you found out it was something you were paying for and turned out to be a teaser for a new Silent Hill game. If it was an indie game that you were paying $5 for, that might be a different story. But
right, if it was his own thing and not leading to something else, a $60 product down the road.
yeah, and so you're in this hallway, and you come out through this door. You walk down 2 hallways. There's a bathroom. There's kind of a nook that could lead out to the front steps of the house, and then you go down some stairs and you go out through another door, and you do this over and over again. But what's amazing about it is that you get into this comfort zone, which is these hallways you're familiar with, and then once you start going through 3 or 4 times, the game begins to change, and subtle things begin to shift in your environment. And then they kind of keep building on that over and over and over again, and layering your comfort level of being in this hallway you're familiar with against they're using that against you. Like, you think you know what's going on around you, and then they use that to trick you in some really amazing ways. You'll walk down the hallway and the doorway to the bathroom is closed, but then when you try to go down the stairs, that door is shut, and when you turn around, suddenly the doorway to the bathroom is open. Or you go to investigate the bathroom, and then you kind of find something on the ground, and all of a sudden while you're in the bathroom, the door slams shut. And it's a lot of stuff taken sort of like how horror usually works. Like, if you talk about horror or the things that happen during these experiences, they sound pretty dumb. What makes PT work is that the visuals are absolutely incredible. It's running on the Fox engine. Kojima claims that they've basically downsampled the assets in order to make them look worse, so it could kind of look like an indie game. They totally failed. Also, that's kind of insulting. But it looks spectacular, and the sound design is just killer. They put you in this space, and they screw with you over and over again. And a couple of the jump scares are so well done. I don't want to spoil exactly how they play out, but there are interactions between the sound and what the player thinks they should do, and then what they end up doing, which sounds weird until you actually see it play out. But the most I'll say for folks that have played it is it's the look behind you sequence. It gets bad. It gets real bad, Alex. It put me in a bad space.
No, I'm getting that. I'm getting that for sure. Yeah, if I had not been completely immersed in the world of professional wrestling this week, I definitely would have downloaded that and checked it out. I told my girlfriend about it, and she seemed pretty excited by the idea of it, despite her not having any real particular affection for anything Hideo Kojima has ever done. She is just into the idea of a Silent Hill thing that doesn't suck. I think she's been waiting for that for a good long while, so I imagine she will want to check it out at some point, and by that I mean she will make me play it while she sits on the couch and then kind of puts the covers over her head and just like, okay, when something scary is about to happen, tell me, so I can just put this over my head.
Yeah, and PT pulls that off. It's not good. It's rough. I started thinking about, if they'd release this as to play the whole thing before it gets into really obtuse puzzles that are not fun, enjoyable. There's a pixel hunt puzzle that is just maddening. When Kojima has talked about how they structured this demo, they thought it was going to take a week for people to crack, which,
right.
Common theme of underestimating the internet's ability to figure out tricky puzzles in a communal fashion. It was solved within a couple hours of it being released. So the reason there's a ton of red herrings, getting the actual demo to finish is incredibly, not so much complex as much as it's just weird and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, was done in the service of trying to extend the life of this demo.
Right.
When in fact what they actually kind of did was make it really, really frustrating for anyone that's playing it, because it doesn't exactly communicate that it's trying to be obtuse in that fashion. And moments where it's trying to be obtuse, you also have ghosts that are chasing you, so it's just it just hits you have 45 minutes in, then you hit this brick wall, that it's frustrating and annoying, and you really hope that the full game isn't structured that way. And by all accounts, it's not going to be. This was, very specific to creating a viral teaser that I just don't think they quite understood the dedication some people would have to figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, you would think by now they would, just marketing people in general would have figured out that any sort of ARG or viral anything, any sort of marketing puzzle that you can construct will be immediately deconstructed within hours. It is not difficult to do this. Just with the sheer amount of manpower and dedicated free hours that the internet has to these kinds of things, there is no chance that is ever going to last more than a day. So it might be good if agencies and PR teams and marketing teams start to learn that you need to work on a different timetable because the internet is faster than you, always.
It appears, back up, I am dumping that onto the front page right now. So if you'd like to jump into the Giant Bomb chat, you can go ahead and do that.
There is a chat room.
There is a chat room. So I've got that open. People can jump in there. Sorry about that. Thank you to our engineers for hopping on that early in the morning. They're on the West Coast as well, so kudos to them for making that happen for all of us. Really do appreciate that. So yeah, if you don't want to watch or play PT rather, because it's no joke. It really isn't. If you're not into horror, it's probably not going to do anything for you. Know what I mean? It's just the same sort of recommendations apply. If you're not a person that tends to get scared by horror games, I'm not sure this is going to change anything. I've heard from a couple of folks that who don't traditionally get into these kinds of experiences have found the hyper-realistic visuals and sound design to actually suck them in. So, if you've been on the fence about this stuff before, probably worth a shot. But your mileage may vary on horror stuff. Some things just don't affect anyone, and there's not a whole lot. It's kind of like it's like comedy. Just some things aren't funny to some people, some things aren't scary to other people. But it was terrifying to me, and I think it'll be terrifying to most people. But if you don't want to watch it, we did play it on Spookin' with Scoops, but because it was something brand new, I thought we would take that out and make it a quick look. So there is a version for premium members where we go on to play Fatal Frame 2, and then there's a version for non-premium members that you can check out as well. So that is on the site if you would like to watch me look like an idiot instead.
God, would I ever. That's always fun, Patrick. It's always fun watching you scare the living shit out of yourself. I've already seen a few of the highlights floating around of you just absolutely losing it over a couple of those moments. Pretty good. You're a good scarer. You're good to be scared.
Well, I take it seriously. I got nothing against what PewDiePie's got going for himself, but part of his style, part of a lot of the YouTube style, is to exaggerate your reactions, and I try to actually respond as naturally as I can. Yes, that means I end up looking like a scaredy cat, especially for someone that loves horror as much as I do. But that's exactly why I love it. I love getting into those moments. I love being scared. So
you like that adrenaline rush?
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster ride. It's the exact same thing. Like roller coaster rides are fun because you get a brush with death in a safe environment, and that's the exact same way I feel about horror stuff, more generally speaking. But that's enough about PT, because that is just one of many things that happened at Gamescom this week. So you didn't play anything worth talking about that you wanna mention?
No, everything
wrestling.
Yeah, what little I played this week will show up on the site in quick look fashion if it hasn't already. Yeah, it's basically just been, we recorded a Power Bombcast. I got to edit that on the plane today as I've been preparing to go to SummerSlam today. Just kind of trying to get all my ducks in a row for that. So I've barely touched any games. I started playing the WWE card battling game last night for.
Okay, I was gonna say that was the first thing I was gonna ask, because we're already talking about wrestling anyway. So the WWE announced WWE Supercard.
Yep.
For iOS and Android devices. What is this?
It is a card battling game. You end up in matchups where you basically create a deck of 5 cards. And it's like 4 male wrestlers, one diva, and you're put into a series of matches against your opponent, and it's kind of randomized in a way, so it's like you have to put together a tag team match, so you have to grab 2 wrestlers, and the stats that are going to matter in this match are strength and charisma. So you want to give it the 2 best guys that have those best ratings in there for that. And then it just kind of puts the two cards together, and then they do a little fake wrestling match, and whoever has the highest stats wins. Like, it's not really like, there's not really much chance to it. It's just you have to put those cards in there that have the right stats. There are power-ups and other things you can use to decrease your opponent's stats or increase your own, but by and large, it's just kind of like throwing that shit together, and eventually someone wins. The matches are incredibly quick. That is sort of the appeal of it, I think, is that you can get in and out of matches in like a couple of minutes, and like cards unlock in a pretty brisk fashion, so you never feel like you're stretching to try and unlock stuff. It's just you just keep doing it on a regular basis, which I think is kind of the hook there. I also don't think it's that great of a game. Like, it's kind of a decent amusement at best, but it is not. It does not seem like a particularly deep game from what I've played, and from talking to Jeff, who has spent more time with it than I have, it does not get a whole lot deeper the more time you spend with it. So I think that as a free-to-play game, it is something that is probably amusing to the audiences intended to target for a short amount of time. I don't know if it's going to have a whole lot of legs.
I do like the idea that Jeff Gerstmann played a sort of CCG light just because it had wrestling on it.
Yeah, that's how you get him into it, is find that one hook that he can relate to. All that fantasy bullshit, that's never going to work for him. I'm willing to accept it. He is not. That said, if you were to put pro wrestling, or say you were to make a CCG based on, I don't know, the movie Cobra, you could probably get him to play that kind of stuff. That's the only gateways he has.
Here's a question from Chat Super Domino, related to wrestling, because you're going to be at SummerSlam, is what this weekend is, right?
That is this weekend. Yeah, it is the second or third biggest pay-per-view of the year.
He asked, do you like pay-per-views filled with gimmick matches? We have a lumberjack and a flag match scheduled for Sunday.
I like the idea of gimmick matches. I think they can be fun. I think they can also get sort of oppressive if too many of them appear on a show, because I don't know, it's sort of hard to keep track of everything that's going on. I mean, there's really only two, like, those are the only two real gimmicky matches. Do you know what a lumberjack match is?
I don't. Do they dress in, do they have axes?
No.
Do they have hairy chests?
I don't know exactly where the terminology comes from, but a lumberjack match is where the ring is surrounded by like 20 to 30 other guys from the roster, and anytime anyone goes out of the ring, they are allowed to be beaten up by whoever is out on the floor. So you don't want to go out of the ring, is the idea. And anytime you do, you will get your shit kicked out of you, or you will get thrown back into the ring by those guys.
Interesting. Do you have a particularly favorite gimmick?
I am a big fan of the Battles Royal. I like the idea of a whole bunch of dudes in the ring all just kind of trying to throw each other out. I think that stuff is pretty fun. The Hell in a Cell stuff can be good, or it can be super boring. It just kind of depends on what they do with it. Those are probably my favorites. I tend to gravitate toward the Battle Royals and maybe like just standard tournaments more than anything else.
What was the ones that like Undertaker would be a part of? I'm trying to mine.
He did a lot of Hell in a Cell.
Okay, Hell in a Cell, I think, is the one Is that where you have to like bury?
No, so so the other two that were sort of his staple were casket matches.
Yeah, the casket match is what I'm thinking of.
The casket match was where you had to put your opponent in a coffin to win the match. And it was like a real old-timey looking, sort of like medieval coffin looking deal. Like it was and those were usually terrible matches, but kind of hilarious in retrospect. The other ones they would do were buried alive matches.
Okay.
Those were matches.
Oh God, buried alive.
Yeah, those were the matches.
Buried alive.
Those are the matches where they would set up these things in like usually in like the back of the arena near where they would come out for entrances, and there would just be a big pile of dirt and a hole, and you had to somehow get your opponent over to there, get him just in the hole, and then get him to stay in there long enough to pour the dirt over him. That is how a buried alive match works. And always the joke with those matches was that the commentators always talk about it like, that person is dead. That person is buried alive. Oh my God. And then when they would come back, it was always this mystifying thing of, how do they come back? I buried you alive. No, how? And it's like, well, No, you didn't, because that would be murder.
See,
Like, that's not.
if you're gonna do a gimmick match, go all the way. Like that's what I love. That's what I loved about the the buried alive matches because it's just so patently absurd, and there are so many steps the wrestler has to do in order for the match to finish. And then, yeah, exactly what you're saying about them having to pretend, like put on this facade that they actually died. Oh, it's the best.
The last one they do sometimes is Inferno matches. That was another thing that Undertaker, I think, was involved in a few of, and Kane has been in a lot of those, where they just surround the ring by this like little thing that's set up with like gas-based fire, and it's just you have to somehow set your opponent on fire, and that always basically involves someone's arm, which has probably some of that fire retardant stuff on there, catching on fire for like 10 seconds, and then like a million dudes with fire extinguishers descending upon him. So it's never that exciting or that great, but they always sound like, oh my god, he's going to be set on fire! And then it's just always like the weakest thing in the world.
All right, well, we'll tease a little bit more about what you think about SummerSlam when we get to the end.
Let's talk about some news.
Ground Zeroes, Phantom Pain, both headed to Steam. It was announced as part of a event attached to Gamescom. Jeff Keighley was interviewing Hideo Kojima, and they showed some more of the Phantom Pain, and then at the end announced that both those games are coming to Steam, which I think is I don't how is that anything other than fantastic news. I'm interested to see what kind of like specs those end up running on. Those are some pretty, Ground Zeroes, a game that didn't really click for me, but it is certainly one of the prettiest games you can buy for either of the next-gen machines, current-gen machines right now. But that seems pretty cool that those games are coming to Steam. I'm not sure there's much else to say except that's pretty cool.
Well, and it's probably important too because it's not like Konami has a whole lot of franchises going on right now that are making them a whole lot of money. So I imagine that getting that big ass game, which is arguably their most marquee thing for the foreseeable future, out on more platforms, especially one that is a little bit more ubiquitous than some of those newer consoles are. I think that's probably just the smartest move they could make.
Yeah, and it just continues the trend that if being a PC owner is probably the smartest move you can make these days. If you're looking for a breadth of content, these days the console guys are fighting it out, and the PC continues to get better and better scraps as a result of what's happening over there. Not that some things aren't exclusively tied to those machines, but increasingly there's not a whole lot that requires you actually buying a console, and a PC continues to be a pretty amazing investment. And there will be better sales for the Phantom Pain and Ground Zeroes on Steam than there will ever be on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live, probably.
Probably, yeah.
I think that's awesome. It just continues to make the PC a more interesting platform as this generation even itself goes on, and that's good to see that Japan's getting more on it. So as we've seen, independent developers and a lot of Western developers really get on upping the quality of their PC ports, Ubisoft notwithstanding. Japan is kind of slowly getting there, but we're seeing more and more of it, right? We got Deadly Premonition on PC. There's Square Enix is getting on the PC more and more. The movement is happening. It is just happening at a slower pace. But getting something like, if the Phantom Pain is day and date on the PC, that's pretty huge. I don't know if we know that for sure quite yet. We don't even have a day and date for the console versions of the Phantom Pain. Sometime in 2015, one would assume. But you would hope that it's pretty close, if not the same day, and that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything that stands out for you from Gamescom?
The news that Sony shipped 10 or actually sold through 10 million units is no small chunk of change. That's a big deal, though. I mean, I don't know exactly how those numbers compare to where, say, the PlayStation 3 was at this time in its lifespan. I imagine it was. I don't think that system was doing as well. But 10 million is a good, nice round number to promote, and that is certainly an achievement. That said, at this point, there still aren't a lot of games for that system. So it's nice to hear that the system is selling well. It would be even nicer if more games would start appearing for it.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling on this generation for sure. That could all change in the next 6 months. I mean, Witcher 3, Dragon Age. Like there's stuff on the horizon. If everything that could come out before the end of next March actually does, it won't. Yeah. But if it does, we get Dying Light, Witcher 3, Batman, if Battlefield Hardline, if all that stuff actually comes out before next March, then we're going to be pretty stacked going into next spring. And then I think that if you haven't bought any of them, next spring seems like a good time to jump in, because that seems like when we're finally going to see those machines kind of getting their feet under them. Hopefully that means there's enough sales for studios to feel comfortable putting out their games. Evolve will also be coming out in February. So there's a lot coming. It just seems to keep getting pushed back by a couple of months at a time, and you start to wonder if are they just waiting for these milestones in sales, or the game's just not done. It's a lot goes into it. But yeah, congrats to Sony. That's certainly an important milestone, and I would be curious to see how that compares to the previous generation. I feel like I have read that this generation is going a little bit faster than the last one, but I don't. I could be wrong. Just pulling shit out of my ass. Oh, also Bloodborne coming out in the next couple months as well. Also known as the only game that matters.
So did they confirm that for sure, that Bloodborne is actually coming out in the next 6 months? Because I remember when I was watching the stream during the conference, everyone kind of looked at each other like, "Wait, really?" That did not seem like a game that was poised to come out.
There were indications even at E3 that game was coming out in early 2015. I can't remember where those whispers were coming from, but that was kind of what was being said, even if that seemed a little crazy for a brand new IP. You would have thought that's coming out, fall 2015, and that would have been completely reasonable. I don't think anyone would have been upset if that's actually what happened. But yeah, they showed some games at the beginning of that press conference, and then said, and these are all games that are coming. The trailers they showed before the press conference began, which is different than the montage they showed to open the press conference, because people were then confused, saying there's no way Uncharted is coming in the next 6 months. And you're right. But the games they showed full trailers for, I guess those games will be released in the next 6 months, which means that would be before the end of the March fiscal year closing, which means that, yeah, it sounds like Bloodborne might be coming before March 2015, which is so exciting. And please don't delay that game. That game will probably get delayed, just because I'm being cynical about it at this point. But man, if that game is not delayed, whew, that would be tremendous.
You should have seen.
Super exciting.
You should have seen Vinny when that idea of that game coming out soon was bandied about. Like he was getting the vapors, something fierce. Like he was verklempt. It was great.
That game
was so excited.
Phenomenal. I am so excited for that game, especially after playing Dark Souls 2, a game that I enjoyed, but was not blown away by it, because it really feels like the true sequel is coming in Bloodborne. But yeah, I hope we get that before next March. That'd be awesome. Also, it would get me off my ass and playing Demon Souls, but we'll see.
One game that will not be coming to the PlayStation 4 in the next 6 months, or probably even through 2015 maybe, is the next Tomb Raider game, which Microsoft announced more or less as an exclusive during their press conference, which we then went on to learn that this was probably just a timed exclusive. This is not a forever thing. And that sort of launched the commentary of the week into a whole thing about this kind of language that publishers and companies use during these press conferences, and how just kind of misleading it can be. I am not necessarily inherently against the idea of Tomb Raider appearing as an exclusive on the Xbox One to start anyway. I do think that is a weird game to try and spend a whole bunch of money to try and grab for yourself, which is not to say that I don't think Tomb Raider games sell. I just wonder whether that is a game that people will actually go out and buy a console for, especially if they know that they can theoretically wait, let's say, a year and get it on a platform they might already own.
Well, so the thing I would say about this, and Phil Spencer even alluded to this in an interview with Eurogamer that I quoted on the site, is that I don't blame folks for being upset.
Sure.
Third-party console exclusives are shitty.
They're not the best.
They feel anti-consumer. They rub folks the wrong way that have become invested in franchises. It's one thing if it's a Bloodborne where Sony is partnering with a studio to develop a new IP. It's different when Tomb Raider Definitive Edition came out earlier this year on PlayStation 4, and
Right.
now the follow-up, which while announced at Microsoft's press conference at E3, at no point was any indication given that would be anything but a multi-platform game, because why wouldn't it be?
Sure.
Now, what I will say is that a lot of the rhetoric and commentary surrounding this deal makes it sound like Microsoft went over, like, bullied Square Enix around and said, give us Tomb Raider.
Which, no.
Not what happened. Like, Square Enix willingly chose to engage with this deal because the numbers made sense for them. There is no world in which Square Enix decided to partner with Microsoft and release a sequel to Tomb Raider on one console, even if it's for a timed launch period or whatever it ends up being, because they wanted to make less money. The only world where they did this was because when they crunched the numbers, they were going to make more money. We don't know how that's going to play out. It could play out in a variety of scenarios. It could be, that Microsoft's partnering on advertising. It could be because Microsoft is giving them more resources. I don't know. There's no way for me to know that, and speculating on exactly why this deal was made, I think is crazy talk, because I don't know. But there is no sane universe where this was done in a way where Square Enix wasn't making more money, or at least thinks they're going to be making more money as a result. And I think a lot of the armchair, financial quarterbacking that happens where, well, why would Square Enix do this? They would sell more copies across all consoles. That might be true, but that doesn't tell the whole story. The whole story involves a lot of numbers that we don't have access to, and those numbers have to add up to making more money, or else we have entered a plane of reality that I do not understand.
Well,
yeah. So go ahead.
Here's the thing, though, is that I don't think Square Enix is in any way ridiculous or foolhardy in making this decision, because if this deal is anything like other even timed exclusivity deals that I have been privy to over the years, I'm guessing that Microsoft basically wheeled a dump truck full of marketing and ad dollars up to them and said, look, we will help you market the shit out of this game. Here is all this money. You don't have to be exclusive forever. That is the way they tend to approach this kind of stuff. And, especially for a publisher that sometimes seems to have a little struggle a little bit making money on their big, marquee titles, there's no reason why you wouldn't take that deal, because you'll get a shit ton of money from them. I think the part that is weird is Microsoft doing this, because I know that they need to make some moves to try and, catch up a little bit with what Sony is doing with the PlayStation 4. But Tomb Raider on its own just doesn't seem like a game that is worth throwing that much money at to get for a limited amount of time for yourself. I'm not saying that Tomb Raider game won't sell, because the last one did, but it's not. I don't think those games are system sellers. Like, I don't think that game is, unless there is something markedly different about that game that I don't know about, I don't have that association in my head. And maybe this is just me, but I don't have that association in my head of, like, this is a game that people will go out of their way to buy systems to play.
I think from Microsoft's perspective, they're hoping it's just a nudge, right? They've positioned this as a holiday 2015 game, which means it's probably coming out in October or November of 2015, right, assuming it's not delayed. And for Microsoft, a multi-billion-dollar corporation that, while in, generally speaking, big picture, is having some struggles, but continues to be extremely popular, it's a drop in the bucket for them to essentially, like, throw Square Enix a lifeboat and say, hey, do you want to make this game less risk-averse? Mm. And in exchange, they get a timed exclusive that, they must be thinking that when you're standing in the Best Buy and you're looking at a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and maybe you're on the fence, like, oh man, I do like those Tomb Raider games, or my wife really likes those Tomb Raider games, or whatever is going through your head. Maybe that's enough to push you over the edge, right? Like, and Sony, I've seen the argument made that, oh well, Sony doesn't need to go out and make these deals. I don't think Sony could afford to make these deals, even if they wanted to. Sony is a corporation that, broadly speaking, is doing very poorly, and the PlayStation department is the only one that is really making a substantial amount of money. I'm not even sure if I'd qualify it as substantial. I don't actually know what that ends up being. I know they're profitable.
Yeah.
But Sony, if they wanted to, I don't know if they could afford to make these deals. So getting into the weeds on those financial stuff is a little weird because we don't get access to those numbers. But I think Microsoft just saw an opportunity. I think Square Enix was scared off by how long it took for Tomb Raider to be profitable. You can certainly say that maybe that was Square Enix fumbling that product for it to take that long to meet their expectations. I don't, again, not privy to that stuff, but you could certainly leverage that critique. But it was a game that, in their minds, however they had figured it out, was not profitable until the end of the year in which that game was released.
Right.
And so for them to look for a partner to make that feel a little less squeamish the second time around, when the game is probably going to cost a little bit more, the user base is going to be a lot smaller, I don't think it's that shocking. I just think what people should be angry about is how Microsoft, Square Enix, and Crystal Dynamics, less Crystal Dynamics, they don't get a choice in the matter, but Square Enix and Microsoft trotted out the exclusive term, when if they just said, hey, Rise of the Tomb Raider is going to be a timed exclusive for the Xbox One, we're really excited to partner with Tomb Raider to make this a bigger franchise than it's ever been. You know what? That gives the wink wink to the people in the know, and it doesn't get everyone fucking angry at you for locking up the game for a period of time.
Yeah. And to be fair, Sony has been doing some of this. They've been locking up some exclusives, or at least timed exclusives, but a lot of that has just been content stuff. DLC and maps and additional content that goes along with games that are released at the same time on multiple platforms. So, they are doing some of that, just not quite to the degree of trying to lock up specific third-party games as their own.
Yeah, so I don't know. I get upset over the exclusive stuff because I don't like being lied to.
Sure.
I don't like putting on our website, Rise of the Tomb Raider is exclusive to Xbox One, and then writing a story the next day that says,
not really.
Not really. You make me look like a liar, and that pisses me off. That frustrates me. And there was some commentary in the follow-up article that I put up, in like, oh, well, you should have just, it frustrated me the journalist didn't wait to get the full story. No, we were lied to. When a company says Rise of the Tomb Raider is exclusive to Xbox One, that is something you can take at face value. That is not something that you have to follow up and ask, what do you mean by exclusive? Now, we live in a world where you do have to do that, especially after this incident.
Like, that's some real Bill Clinton ass. It depends on what you think "is" means. Like, what your definition of the word is. Like, that's not... that is some language navigation that is some roundabout ass bullshit. Like, that is no, it's just garbage. That is just straight up garbage.
Yeah, and you make me look like an asshole, and that pisses me off. And when then it all gets clarified in an interview with Phil Spencer, because he seems like a pretty okay guy, and he's all right with dropping the veneer and explaining a little bit how the business works. That's fine, but you know what? You could have done that 24 hours ago, and then I don't look like an asshole. And so that part really pisses me off. The term exclusive has been diluted in the last couple of years, and this brings it to an all-new low that really is just infuriating. So
agreed.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't
do it.
Don't.
Anyway.
So that's that.
That's that. And that game will probably be pretty good. I thought the last Tomb Raider was pretty okay.
It was a very good game.
It was fun. They brought back Until Dawn, which was announced a couple of years ago as a PS3 horror game, and now it is a PlayStation 4 horror game. It's theoretically a game that I think could be amazing. Essentially, they're applying the logic of Heavy Rain, in which anyone can die, anything can happen, and putting that into a slasher flick, which on paper sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Hoping that turns out okay. They didn't announce a release date for that. They also seem to have dropped the PlayStation Move angle. That was a big part of that game's original announcement, that it was kind of a move game, that was a horror game that
I don't think you can say the words PlayStation Move game in 2014 and have anyone react other than, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, they have moved. Sony has largely moved on. Damn it. I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. We'll stop talking about that story.
Okay. I'm very disappointed in you.
I'm disappointed in myself. I didn't mean to do it. It just came out. Sierra is back officially.
Yeah.
We were teased that about 2 weeks ago, and then formally it was revealed that, unsurprisingly, they are being tasked with bringing back some old Sierra franchises. The first of which is King's Quest, coming from the Odd Gentleman, who made the charming and really fun The Misadventures of P.B. Winterbottom. They recently worked on that. What's that one they worked on? The Neil Gaiman game that apparently is not any good. Apparently, it was terrible.
Yeah, I remember seeing that existed. It was described to me as just a very casual, targeted game, like not something that anyone who was looking for something a little more challenging would ever want to play. So
yeah, so they're working on a new King's Quest. Don't know a whole lot about it. There's a brief plot summary that doesn't mean anything to me because I played one King's Quest back in the day, and that was it. I was more of a Space Quest kind of kid. I did a lot of Space Quest. I really liked those games. They were funny.
Yeah.
So sure, yeah. That seems like that could be all right. I don't really have strong opinions on that one way or the other. The other game that they're bringing back is the one that a lot of people have very strong opinions about, which is that they are being Sierra's also reviving. I guess maybe not reviving. It hasn't been gone that long, but producing a sequel to Geometry Wars. Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions.
9 years, by the way, was the last time
really?
Yeah, it was 2005. So the Xbox came out.
No, I was thinking when the last one came out. The Activision one that came out for the Wii and stuff.
Oh, was it Galaxies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that one entirely.
I heard it was not that bad.
Also, I'm sorry, Geometry Wars 2 was in 2008, so I'm totally out of my mind.
Yeah. So Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions. So Geometry Wars creator Stephen Cakebread is not involved. He confirmed that on Twitter. But
by the way, one of my favorite names in all of video games.
It's real good.
Cakebread. Great name.
It makes me very hungry as well.
Yes.
But Lucid Games, who is actually developing Dimensions, is comprised of a bunch of ex-Bizarre Creations developers. So while the original creator not on board, it is a bunch of ex-Bizarre Creations folks. After that studio disbanded a couple of years back. So there's at least some pedigree from the studio in which the employee that created the original Bizarre or Geometry Wars is there. The sequel was made by a small team as opposed to a single person.
Right.
But I guess the hook with the new Geometry Wars is that it's fully 3D. Like it's kind of Super Mario Galaxy style where you're going around whole planets. I guess that could be all right.
Yeah, could be fine. I don't know if you played the one game of theirs that I played was that Jacob Jones and the Bigfoot mystery game, which I quite liked. It was on Vita and iPad. And
no, I have no idea what is that?
Jacob Jones and the Bigfoot mystery. You haven't played that? It's a little puzzle game. I think I talked about it a little bit last year when I downloaded it. But yeah, it's a neat little game, and so it shows that at least there are some people there who know what they're doing in making games. So. And the fact they are attached to Bizarre is not a bad thing either. I don't know. I have faith in that game. I'm glad they're reviving it. I would like to at least see what would happen if someone else tried to make, that. And if it's bad, then we know that without the cake bread factor. There are some problems, and maybe Geometry Wars just doesn't work. And if it's good, guess what? Geometry Wars is back, and that's fucking great.
Yeah, who wouldn't? I mean, on its face, it sounds like a neat concept. The idea that you would wrap, I feel like Geometry Wars was taken as about as far as it could go with Geometry Wars 2.
Right.
So
Apex Geometry Wars.
Yeah. So when you're gonna make a sequel to expand that, that it's at least it sounds inventive. It may not be good, but I'd rather that than just Geometry Wars 3 with more bullshit.
Yeah.
It seems like at least it's a different approach. We'll see how it turns out. But yeah, I don't know. That's interesting that it sounds like Sierra is going to be simultaneously a place for Activision to find homes for dormant IP that they're not messing with in the AAA space, and also to incubate downloadable independent games. Like it seems like Activision recognized they're bad at all that stuff.
Right.
And said, well, what if we made an internal studio that was explicitly focused on that? Because what would happen is you have games like Prototype, which are not big enough to hang with the likes of a Grand Theft Auto, but maybe still deserves to exist with lowered expectations. And so it seems like Sierra is being kind of created as a brand that works in smaller titles in which there's not so much like, oh, it's got to sell a bajillion copies.
Right.
So you may not get games on the scale of Prototype, but you might get, a new King's Quest game, which that sounds kind of interesting. And also, I guess that means never getting that Telltale King's Quest game. This is officially the death of Telltale working at a King's Quest game, which they announced years ago.
Yeah.
Back after it was back when they revealed that Telltale was going to expand at a rapid rate. They announced the Jurassic Park game, and they showed that off at an event where they also announced they were making a King's Quest, Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us was announced as Fables at the time, and I think that was did they announce Back to the Future at that same event? They might have.
God, I can't remember. But, at this point, it's not like Telltale doesn't have enough on its plate.
Yeah. They put out a teaser for that Walking Dead finale. I got to play that episode this weekend. Let's see.
Not that long.
Michel Ancel making a new game called Wild.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what to make of that game quite yet, but it looks interesting.
Can I play as the wolf? That's the only question I have about that game. Can I just be the wolf? That's all.
It's got some wild visuals. There's
Ah!
God damn it!
What are you doing today, Patrick? What are you doing?
That's 2 strikes. What happens when I get to the 3rd strike?
Giant novelty anvil just appears out of thin air and drops on your head.
Yeah, okay. I want to play another Michel Ancel.
I do too, Patrick.
Ninja Theory's making a new game. Hellblade.
See, that's a hard title to work a pun into, so you're probably okay on this one.
I don't. Yeah, they didn't show a whole lot about it, but I'm glad that Ninja Theory is making a new game. I kind of wish they were making another Devil May Cry because I really liked that game. But sure, they can work on Hellblade. That's fine.
Someone pointed out that Hellblade is more or less the polar opposite of Heavenly Sword.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything to glean from that other than those two things sound similar but different.
Huh.
But just saying. That could be something. I don't know. There's nothing to know about that game yet. It is a thing that exists, and it's called Hellblade. Which the most surprising thing to me was there are no other games called Hellblade. Like that just like you'd think someone would have figured that out by now.
Yeah, it's a fairly generic title. But I also like the fact that Ninja Theory, although it keeps wanting to work on sequels, just keeps making something brand new every time. That's also super exciting. Enslaved, I thought was fantastic. Devil May Cry was fantastic. I didn't like Heavenly Sword. It was pretty. That
I
was
think
about
Heavenly
it
Sword was fine. It
for
was
the
enjoyable
time.
enough, but kind of empty.
Yeah, but they're on a roll right now, and I'm kind of okay as long as they get to continue existing and they don't go out of business. I don't really have an issue with them being forced to make brand new games every single time.
No, no, that's not the worst thing in the world to have to do.
No. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. And then there's a couple other small things. We found out that mysterious BioWare game is like a 4v4 arena thing called Shadow Realms. It's kind of seems like the Secret World, that MMO that I don't think even exists anymore. I don't know.
Mhm.
Coming from BioWare Austin, I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings about it. Q Games revealed a new game called The Tomorrow Children, which seems like a Soviet Minecraft.
Yeah, that
All I
was
could really pull out of the trailer they showed.
the one detail I pulled out of there was the shot of all the kids mining and pulling just all the innards out of the giant monster they had just killed. That to me was the most bizarre and awesome thing about that whole trailer. I have no idea what that game is, but I really want to know what that game is.
Yeah, it was an intriguing trailer for sure. You know, I like what Q Games does. I really enjoyed the Pixel Junk Shooter series. Both of those games were pretty fantastic. So they're always at least interesting.
Yeah,
It'd be cool if at one point they just went and made like a Star Fox clone.
yeah, that would be cool. You're right. I would be into that.
I guess Nintendo is making another Star Fox, but who knows when that's coming out? And I don't know. The roots of Q Games in working on Star Fox games. I think that'd be cool if at some point they just decided to say, "Fuck it," and just go make one of their own.
Yeah, yeah, that would be nice.
I think that covers most of the major news, unless
That's
there's anything
good.
that you wanted to touch
No,
on.
I gotta catch a flight here in a little bit. So,
You do. So okay, well, very brief before we let you go.
mhm.
What are your expectations for the SummerSlam? What are you looking forward to? What's going on?
So as far as I know, I get there tonight. Nothing is happening tonight, but tomorrow there is a panel where they are going to announce the roster for the game, and they are going to have people like Hulk Hogan and Sting and John Cena there for that, and there will be some opportunities to interview some of them. This morning, there was like a Radio Row thing that Dan was at, where he has been meeting some other wrestlers and getting them to do, I think, some stuff for the Power Bombcast, which is kind of exciting. And then tomorrow night, they are showing the game. We are going to an event where they're going to show off the game and let people play it in the U.S. for the first time, because I guess they had it at Gamescom. There was some leaked footage of that game floating around out there. And then Sunday is the show, and I think the show will be fine. We talk about it at length on the podcast, which I'm going to edit on the flight. Will be up either later tonight or very early tomorrow. And then we're also probably going to do some podcasting while we're there. I don't know exactly everyone that's going to be on yet, but I have invited Pace Garrett Martin, who's going to be in town, to come on. He is a 30 years strong wrestling fan, very big fan of the old Southern wrestling stuff. So, and he is one of my favorite grumps on Twitter. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
having him
he's
on
the
there.
editor over at Pace Magazine, and also the least likely person you would think is super into wrestling.
Yeah, at the same time, if you if you grow up in that area, I think that, and if you were exposed to like old wrestling on TV back then, especially like the territorial era stuff, I can imagine that he would hold on to that. Though he talks about the WWE like it is the devil, so that'll be an interesting thing to have him there for that.
All right, final question.
Hmm.
Who is in the final match of SummerSlam, and who's going to win?
It is John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. And my current theory is that Brock Lesnar will win it.
Is it a conspiracy?
No, well, I mean, I don't know. It could be, but I
Well,
think
it's written in advance, so I guess if you consider scripted content to be a conspiracy.
sure. I think everyone is just so bored with the idea of John Cena continuing on as champion that anything would seem better at this point. And I don't even really like Brock Lesnar, but I would be totally fine with Brock Lesnar winning, because that would at least be something different.
All right, well, it sounds like you got a lot going on this weekend. There'll be some content going up on the site, and then probably a bunch of stuff next week when you guys get back on Monday on
Indeed.
So you will be missing Monday's show, but
I
I
will.
have wrangled Lord of the Rings expert Alexa Ray Korea to join me on Monday's show. So we will head on in your steed. We will continue the morning show with her on Monday. So I'm looking forward to that. You should look forward to that, and then we will chat, I guess, a week from now.
Oh.